Let me start recording first. Today we are going to see the remaining program. So program number 7 is various ways to access external memory, right? So external memory can be accessed in various ways, and we call those ways as indexing, right? So here I have shown all the possible ways in which the external memory can be accessed, right? So in yesterday's lecture, we have seen one important concept that if you write a command like move in bracket si and then you put a data which is of only 2 bytes, then definitely one location will be filled up with that data. But even if you keep if the data is of 1 byte, then the data location of 1 byte will be filled up. But if you keep the data of 2 bytes, say 9090h, in that case also this command is perfectly valid and 2 bytes will be filled, right? 2 bytes will be filled, and those two will be filled in little endian fashion. And that is one of the advantages that we have got in 8086. I told you that in one machine cycle you will be able to fill 2 bytes of data, and for that only we have got even and odd memory bank separation in 8086, right? So that is also possible, taking 2 bytes from the external memory location and giving 2 bytes to the external memory location in just one machine cycle, right? So now in this program we are going to see various ways of accessing the external memory. So first of all, we have initialized our data segment. Then this is the very first way of accessing the memory locations. So you can just put some value in si and in bracket si 90h. So this is very simple. 90 will be moved to a location 50,001. The actual physical address will be 5,000. A 0 will be appended, then 0001 will be added to that, and at 50,001 memory location this 90h will be kept, right? Then you can also access it by using by adding some displacement, right? So you can use this si in bracket si. Together with that you can use some displacement, right? So this displacement is again a number, and this displacement could be of 8-bit displacement or a 16-bit displacement. So that way you can put this 91h or 92h into a location si plus 01, the offset which is pointed by si plus 01, and in this case si plus 0002h. So these values will be moved there, right? Similarly, now this thing of putting these indexes, these I mean second indexes, if you want to put them, which we call as displacement, this will be valid with bx, bp, si and di register. But in this 8086 simulator, this does not work with bp register. With bp register they have not programmed it to work, so bp will not work. But ideally or theoretically bp register can also do the same thing. So you can simply write in bracket si or di or bx or bp, and then some displacement, and then the data can be moved, right? Now after that you have again got the same thing. You have moved something in bx register, and this is called I mean here you can put either bx or bp. Then after that you can put si, and then at that particular address you can move some data, right? So this is valid for either bx or bp. I mean the first registers could be bx or bp, and second register has to be si or di. But again here in this case they have not programmed bp to work with this command, right? And you can combine these two modes and generate this third mode where you can use this bx si and 01h or bx si and 002h combinedly, and you will be able to transfer some data there, right? But not more than this. I mean you cannot have another displacement and will be able to transfer the data. So only 3 levels are possible, and this facility has been given in 8086 because if sometimes you make double loops or triple loops, so this will come very handy. Or if you sometimes make some kind of lookup tables, etc., so there also this will be very handy for you to deal with. So these are some ways in which external memory can be accessed. The program that I have made here, it is only for writing something into the memory, But if you want to read something from the memory, then also this type of syntax can be used by interchanging the positions of data and these index locations, right? So how the physical address is again generated? The physical address is again generated in the hardware by using that separate adder that we saw. So it will just have this base address and it will append 0 after that. And suppose if you are using this mode, then all of these three things will be added to generate a physical address, right? So this is very simple where you have used indexing. Now let's move to another important program, which is assembler directives, and there is .com style of programming and .exe style of programming. So there are two styles of programming. One is called as .com style and another is .exe style. So let me see if we have some simple programs for .com and .exe first. Okay, this is the simple one only. So uh, .com style of programs and .exe style of programs. These are only two possible ways in which you can. These are not the only two possible ways in which you can program, in which you can write programs in 8086. There are multiple ways. There are multiple styles of writing programs, but .com and .exe are popular, right? So even if you will press this new tab, you will be able to see there is this .com template or .exe template, .bin template, and .boot template, right? So there are these possible four modes, but we are focusing only on .exe and .com mode, right? So that's what we are going to do. Let me again open that code. Yeah. So this COM mode and EXE mode of programming, these are actually traditions of writing the program, right? Even if you mix a program of .com mode and .exe mode, this assembler is not going to flash any error. Assembler will not flash any error, but the program might not work as intended when you actually put that program onto the chip, right, onto the hardware. So that program might not actually work. So these are traditions. These are not strict rules that in this way only you have to program, and if you somehow happen to use the command of .exe mode and .com mode of programming, then it will not work. It is not so. It will work, but then the program will not work as intended. So .com mode of programming, in this style of programming, we assume that we are going to write our program only in 64 kilobyte locations. Only in 64 kilobyte locations, as we had in 8085. So in 8085, we had a 64 kilobyte of externally interfaced memory, and there we could write programs. But in 8086, we have 1 megabyte, and we could use the full 1 megabyte space. However, if you assume all the segments as overlapping segment, we have got four segments in 8086, that is data segment, extra segment, code segment, and stack segment. So these segments, as I told you on the previous turn, they could be separated from each other, or they could partially overlap, or they could also fully overlap. So .com style of programming is that style of programming in which all of the segments are assumed to be overlapping by 100% with each other, right? So that's what our assumption will be, and that restricts the size of the program to be 64 kilobyte, and it makes your program compatible with the older computers, for example 8085, right? So you can see that here I have also introduced certain assembler directives. So you can just give cseg as any name and then segment. I mean, this is any segment. Cseg, since I wanted to make it code segment, so I have put cseg for my convenience here. But actually, you can give any name. You can give any name, right? As I told you on the previous turn that inside 8086 memory, there could be multiple segments at a point of time, multiple data segments, multiple code segments, multiple stack segments. So they don't have the same name every time, right? A segment is just a segment which can have any name. So here you are creating a segment, right? cseg is just any name, and here you are creating a segment, and here you are ending your C segment. So whatever is written in between these two lines, this is the content of that segment. Now whether you declare this segment as code segment or data segment, it depends upon the very next statement. Assume. So assume DS is C-seg, that means data segment is this complete segment only. Then assume ES as C-seg, which also means that this is the extra segment itself, and SS as C-seg, which also means that this is the code segment itself. So C-seg is not for code segment, the name can be any name. So this is any segment that you have designed, and through this assume statement, you have declared this to be code segment. You have declared it to be data segment, extra segment, and stack segment as well. And now since this is .com style of programming, so definitely this will be your code segment also. So there is no need to write DS, ES, SS as you have written. There is no need to write CS and colon CSEG, because that is by default done. So then one characteristics of these .com style of programs is that they will start at .org 100h. org 100h, or if you convert 100h into decimal, it will become 256. So these programs will start from location 256, because first 0 to 255 memory locations, they will be there for storing some kind of operating system in .com mode of programming, right? So that is why your program will start from org 100h. So this is one characteristic by seeing which you can identify that it's a .com mode of programming, right? And since this is the data segment as well as the code segment as well as the stack segment as well as the extra segment, so you have to define your data as well as code here. So you can see that I have defined some numbers at the bottom of the code by using some assembler directives, right? So these are the assembler, I have created a variable. You can see here I have created a variable num1, and that is db means define byte, and its value is 15h, 15 in hexadecimal, right? Similarly, num2 is there. It is defined as a byte db, and its value is f1h. f1h is the f1 is the value, and h is for hexadecimal. 0 is appended because it starts with a character. So that is why the value happens to be f1 for num2. Then similarly, result is also defined byte, but its value is unknown. So we have put a question mark there, so it will keep some garbage value in Excel. Similarly, carry is defined byte and question mark is there. So this is how you have defined your data. After defining your data, now whenever you will use num1 in your program, it will mean that you are using 15h, right? So now you have started writing your program. Inside AL register, you have moved num1. Inside AL register, add AL comma num2. So you have taken two arguments, AL comma num2, and you have added them both, and you have stored the result in AL register itself, right? So if you will write the command in reverse way, AL num2 comma AL, it will not work, because in that case, what will happen is the destination will be num2, and num2 is not actually some location where the result can be stored, so that you should keep in mind. Then you have taken move result comma AL. So in this, the result will be moved from the AL to this result location, and then RCL AL by 0, 1. So let us first read the purpose of this program. The objective of the program is to add two numbers kept in memory by the name num1 and num2, and store the result in the variables named result and carry, right? So when two numbers, that is AL and num2, are added, obviously the result will be there, and there is a possibility of having some carry, right? So first of all, we have added them by using this add AL comma num2 command, and we have stored the result in result variable, which we have already created. And then since the result is already stored, but there might be a possibility of having some carry, so we have used this RCL command. We are rotating through the carry flag by left, right? RCL is used for rotating the accumulator, that is AL register, by left, uh, and carry flag will be used for copying purposes. So here inside AL we have moved a value of 01h, which will mean this this AL will contain the value of 01. AL will be moved by 01h to the left hand side, right? So you can imagine that AL will contain 8 bits, and it will contain 8 bits, and if you will move it to the left hand side, the MSB will pop out and it will go to the carry flag, and that's what we want, right? It will be popping out. The MSB will be popping out. It will be copied to the carry flag, and the MSB will circularly come back to the LSB position, because LSB has been shifted by 1 bit. So let me just illustrate it by a diagram. Right. So here, suppose there are these 8 bits. So let me number them as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So these are all bits, right? So I have numbered them, but they will be 1010 and something. So as you use this RCL command will be used. So this thing will go to the carry flag, because you are using RCL command. This will go to the carry flag, and this will again go to the MSB position, right? 8 will be shifted to the position of 7, and similarly 7 will be shifted to the position of 6, and so on and so forth, and 1 will be shifted here. So whatever is this position, whatever this carry flag is copied here also. So whatever is this position, we want to know this. So what do we want to do? We will keep all zeros. 7 zeros will be there and 1. So this number we will take and we will AND them bit by bit. That's what we are doing here. So you can see that this RCL command, if you move it by 0, 1, the carry will be there in your least significant bit position, and you're ANDing it with 7 zeros and 1, and this B is there, right? So after ANDing them, you will get carry in AL register, and you will move the carry to that particular location, right? And then you are calling this move AX 4C00H and interrupt 21H, right? So let us run this program and see what is the result. Yeah. So this is a simple program where let us see now in .com modes. Okay, let me start that again. So in .com mode, you can see that your characteristics are that your program will start from 0100. This program has to start from 0100, and then if this happens, then definitely you will be able to see that your data segment, extra segment, and code segment registers, they should also be initialized with the same thing, but here they are differently initialized. So let us run this code step by step, and you can see that your code segment again now starts from 0700 the moment you have pressed that. So let me step back again. Okay. So here your code segment has started from 0700, that's the base address, but the instruction pointer has started from 0100. So that is perfectly valid, because the instruction pointer has to start from 0110 wherever your code segment starts from. So code segment is same as your data segment, is same as your stack segment, and is same as your other thing, that is the stack segment, data segment, extra segment. And after that, the only point to note is here is 0100 is there, and if it is a .exe mode program, then the 0100 will not be there, all zeros will be there, right? And this, you can just simply see that where these locations are stored, I mean where these things are stored in your code. So you will see that data and this code will also be stored in the same location. So if I move a little downward, so let me see it here. So before all these 90s are written, you can see that this location 0000 is there, and F115 is there. So at the bottom of your complete code, 15 F1 and 00 are stored. 15 F1, and this is some random location for result and carry. So these 4 locations are actually your locations of data, and rest is the portion of your code. So you can see that you are able to store your data and your code in the same thing, in the same segment. So that is why this is .com style of programming. And when you are not a user of this 8086 computer, if you are using higher level programming languages, then in that case you do not bother with whether your programming is in .com or .exe style, right? So in those days it was there, because you could use .com and .exe mode of program. So here we are again going to use the same program, but now we are going to create various segments for various things. So here you can see the same program is there. So num1, num2, result and carry are defined, but you have defined it in one segment. I have named that segment as data segment, but that doesn't mean that this becomes data segment now, right? We have to write it in the assume statement. So one segment I have created here, another segment I have created here. Inside code segment, wherever I intend to uh, just create my code segment, the first thing that I have to do is I have to declare that which is the code segment I am using. So CS will be my code segment. I mean, here the code is there. So this CS code segment should have the base address of this code, and DS should have the base address of this data. So this becomes data segment now. Otherwise, you could have put any name here, your name here, and this would be just a segment. But by writing this statement, you have declared this as data segment, right? Then you can just type whatever code you want to type. So start move EX data. So here data segment has been initialized, DSAX, and in AL num1 has been put, and that has been added to this AL register. So these are added. Then in the same way you did in the last program, we proceed here. The only point of difference that you will note here is that in this .exe mode of program, this instruction pointer will start from 0000, right? So this is one of the characteristics of .exe and .com mode of programming. And for the purposes of understanding, it is easy for us to write programs in any of the modes, but .com mode is preferred, right? Because there only you have got 64 kilobytes of memory and segments can overlap by default, so that you can do. Now, an important topic is near and far function calls in both of the modes, right? So, first of all, we are going to study a near function call and then a far function call. So, if you talk from the perspective of programming languages like C and C++ and other higher programming level and higher level programming languages, you will notice that there is simply a function call, not a near function call or a far function call, right? Because there the work of memory management is not done by the user. But here in these kind of processes, the memory has to be managed by the user himself, because you have an exclusive access to every cell of the memory, right? In C programming, you had an access to every cell of the memory, but you rarely call it, you rarely use it like you supply the address of some memory location and then you want to take out the data from that memory location. So that rarely happens, right? And the memory management at the back end is done by that C language itself, right? So here the memory management is also to be done by us, and that way, if you are making a program such that you are just calling a function which belongs to the same segment, then you call it as a near function call. And if the function that you have written is in another segment, then you call it as a far function call, right? So near and far, they are different in this sense. Near means in the same segment, and far will mean that you are using it in different segments, right? So you have created a data segment here. You have created one segment here which contains nothing, and you have created then a code segment which starts from here and ends at here, right? So let's see, since this is a near function call, so we have to write the main procedure and the function that you are using to call that. So you have to write that in the same segment. So I'm writing everything in this CS or the code segment. So here you have written assume CS is the code segment and DS is the data segment. Although this data segment is empty, but since we are writing the program in .exe mode, that is why I have just written the data segment here to demonstrate that this data segment could also exist as separate entity. Now, since in a function call there will be a main program and the function procedure, so this is the main procedure, and the way to write this main procedure is you have to begin your main procedure by writing this command main, and PROC means procedure, and simply main, and end P means end procedure. So main keyword has to be used here together with this procedure. And now you have initialized your data segment here by the address, and here you are moving some value into BL and CL register, and you want to add those values. So you are calling this function which is called as addition function. Call addition function, and this addition function will add these two values, right? So this addition function is written after the ending of this main program, and this addition function is a procedure. So addition function procedure, and add BL comma CL, and the data will be stored in BL and you will return from the program. And this is how you add the addition function. Now the thing here is that this return statement, it won't return anything, because 8086, everything is a global variable, right? So in C programming, whatever variables you create inside function, they vanish after the execution of function, right? However, in 8086, this is not the case. If you have made a change to this BL and CL inside your program, then that change will be reflected globally. So in fact, returning will mean that you are just simply returning to the original location where your program was getting executed. Now there is no concept of returning something from this to the original function, right? So whatever is the set of registers, it is accessible to both the main program and the procedure that you have used. So in a way you can return as many variables as you want, and in a way you are returning nothing, because the nature of this registers that are available for usage, they are global. So since global nature is there, so you can return as many things as you want there, right? So this is how we program a near function call in .exe style. Now let us see a far function call, which is little more complicated. And in far function call, obviously you have to call a function which is in different segments. So I'm doing the same work here, but I have created an extra segment in which I have defined my addition procedure. And here you can see that addition function is named, it is the name of the function, procedure is written, and it is also labeled as far. It is a far procedure, right? So if you want to define a far function, then you have to label that as far after writing the procedure keyword, right? And then in code segment, forget these lines for now, I will explain them. In code segment, you have written the usual code and you have called the addition function, but before that a far keyword has been attached. A far keyword has been attached before that, right? So this is as simple as that, but what are these lines doing here? So let us see these lines, right? So offset underscore print underscore me and dw. This is some variable which is of 2 bytes in length, which is of 2 bytes in length, and it is uninitialized. Similarly, this is segment print underscore me, and this is dw. It is also uninitialized, right? And then inside these two variables, you are moving some values, offset print me, and here you are moving this addition function. Addition function, I mean this addition function's address will be moved into this offset print me, and segment print me, there will be this segment addition function. That means segment of the addition function is extra segment. So whatever this segment, its base address will be moved there, right? So uh, uh, here you have assumed this extra as your extra segment, DSS data and CSS code, right? So whenever this program will be executed, these locations, offset print me and segment print me, will be used. They will be used to see the base address of the function and the base address of the segment in which that program exists, right? So that will be used, and that's how your function will be called. If you try removing these lines, your function will not work. So these lines are mandatorily to be written before executing your main procedure. And the main procedure is exactly similar to what we have done in the previous program. The only difference is now the program has been written in a different segment. And since it is written in a different segment, the changes that we have noted are this far keyword has to be introduced here, and while calling also you have to use this far keyword, and these additional lines have to be written at the beginning of the program, so as the assembler would know where the far procedure is written, right? So this is how you make programs in far style of programming. Let's move to another code. Okay, function calls in .com style. So in .com style, since you have only one segment, right? So you won't be jumping from one segment to other segment, because everything will be there in 64 kilobyte memory, and you don't have to make multiple segments there. So only one common segment will be there for everything. So obviously you can program here in .com mode and not in .exe mode, right? So that is why this org100 appears here, and you have written your main procedure, and you have moved some data here. BL and CH, they contain some data. Then you have called your addition function, And addition function, as you have seen already, it can be written in this way. And since this is .com style of programming, so this org 100h is there, right? So now the thing is, here we cannot do programming in .exe mode, because .exe mode you already are aware that it will have multiple segments. So there is no possibility of making multiple segments here. So we have .com mode only, right? After that, in our code list, yeah, defining arrays. This is an important thing, because when we will do interfacing, so these concepts will come very handy. So here, how do you define arrays in 8086? So I've defined this in .com mode only, but it can be done in any mode for that matters. So this, you have your data, which is represented by dot data. So this does not create any additional segment, but this just defines that you are creating your data. So this num1 will be the name of your array. db will mean defined byte, and you want to have 5 locations. You want to have 5 locations in your array, and they all have to be filled with 88 in hexadecimal. So this is how you define an array inside your 8086 external memory. You have num1, which is the name of that array, and defined byte means every location of this array will be of 1 byte. You can also have defined word, dw. So every location in that array will be of 2 bytes. So here we are using only 1 byte. So define byte, and then 5 locations will be there in that array, and every location has to be filled with 88h. That is why you have write DUP. DUP means duplicate. If you do not want to fill your array with something, so you can just put a question mark here, right? So that will be duplicated. I mean, garbage value will be put there. So this is how you can define your data. And then inside your main procedure, if you want to load the effective address, LEA means load the effective address in SI for num1 plus 3. Now num1 is the name of this complete array, as well as it is the name of the very first element of the array. This is also common to C programming language. The name of the array is the name of the first element of the array also. So if you want to get the effective address of the fourth element, if you want to get the effective address of the fourth element, then num1 plus 3 has to be done. And the load effective address command will load the effective address of the fourth element, because it happens to be num1 plus 3, and that address will be loaded in the SI register, and at that particular location you can make changes. So since that has been loaded into SI, so there you can put some of the data, right? And so this is how you can access one single element of an array. So you can access any location just by using this load effective address command, and in SI register you will have the address of whatever element you want to have. So in this way you can define arrays also here. Then let us come to string printing. String printing you might have seen already, and this will also come very handy later on. So in this .com style of programming, first of all you have defined your data as MSG, define byte, and here you have written this string. String has to be dollar terminated. Every string has to be dollar terminated, and this string is being defined here in the code segment. If you want to print this string, you are just using this move dx comma offset of message. So dx register should contain the offset of message. Message is your complete string that you have defined, right? So this offset of the message should be kept in dx register. Once that has been kept in the dx register, you have to call interrupt 21h, and interrupt 21h will print the string onto the screen if and only if this AH register contains a value of 09H. So interrupt 21H can serve multiple functions, and it serves multiple functions according to whatever value is kept in this AH register. So if a value of 09 in hexadecimal is kept in this register, then it will do the job of printing the string onto the screen, right? So let us see it running. So if you run it, after running, you can see that the string my name is ABCD is printed onto your screen. Now what is this screen? We haven't yet interfaced anything with 8086. So this screen is the screen of disk operating system. So by default, I mean by construction, this 8085 is interfaced already with DOS screen, right? Disk operating system. So onto that screen, if you want to display something, then in that case you have to use this AH09H. 09 has to be moved in AH register, and interrupt 21H will print it accordingly, right? So this is how you can print the string onto the screen. Okay, printing the screen and defining a macro. Now this macro thing is very important because macro is like an abbreviation of something. Macro is an abbreviation of something. So for example, our college has abbreviation as MANET, and MANET has got its full form. So that full form is called as macro, right? So let us first see our main program. This is our main program where what we are doing is we have defined two strings. These are the two strings, string 1 and string 2. And inside the code section, you can see that I have written something like print str1. Now this print is not a part of your command set of 8086, but through assembler directives, you can assign some full form to this print. And that full form is called as macro. So print is a macro here whose full form is defined in this way. So you are defining print as a macro, and the argument that you can pass to it is p1, right? And here end m defines end macro. So end m will simply mean that you want to end your macro, right? So what you want to do is through this print, obviously you will want to print this string onto the screen. So there are three steps in printing. First of all, you will call interrupt h by moving 09h into AH register, and DX will contain offset of P1. So whatever P1 will be passed here, this P1's offset will be kept into DX register, and these three lines, as we have discussed in the previous code also, they will be printing the string onto the screen. And after the string is printed, the job is not over. You have to also print a carriage return character and a new line character, right? For example, whenever you type something onto the screen, you hit the enter button. So that is the way you reach to the new line. So hitting the enter button will automatically type the carriage return character and bring you to the new line. So that is why you have to print this both characters also. So for that, yeah, there are two more steps. You have to again call interrupt h with these two values. I mean, DL should contain 0D and AH should contain 02. So a carriage return character will be printed, right? And after that, if you want to go to new line, so DL should have 0A and AH should have 02 value. So that is why you will go to new line. So when you hit enter onto your keyboard while printing, you will see that you will automatically reach to the new line. So those two purposes are served by that carriage return and new line, right? So this is the print macro. It has been defined here, and this is not a function call. You are not passing something to this function as a function. So whatever this P1 is, P1 is the argument, and here that argument, as you can see, it happens to be str1. So print str1 is your str1 is your first argument. So whenever this print will be expanded, this entire set of code will be put in the place of this print, and this P1 will be replaced by str1. So print will be expanded to this code. It's not that when this print str1 is called, it will work in the way a function is called, right? So the addresses will be put onto the stack and so on and so forth. It will not happen. Simply what you have to do is this code will be inserted here after the assembling procedure is over. So this is the full form of this print. And macros are very helpful because by defining macros, you can make your program sensible to read, right? So it looks more sensible. Print str1 has to print this string str1 here, right? So now let's come to the next program. Macro is completed. Interrupt. Okay, right. So for this interrupt program, I think I have explained it to you with some examples. So that example is not present here. So let me take the next program. Right. So this is again an important thing to note. This is some full syntax. This is some full syntax of doing programming. for DS and ES, extra segment and data segment. We have been using their short notation, but here in this program we have illustrated how to use them in full syntax. And the purpose of this program is just to tell you that you already know that with this extra segment and data segment, SI and DI registers can be used as having their offset addresses. Now, suppose in a program you have both extra segment and data segment, right? And inside that program, you are keeping some value into SI. So, what should that SI refer to? What offset address does SI contain? Should it belong to the data segment or should it belong to the extra segment? So that tie is being breaked here. You can see that there are various lines of codes written. So let us first initialize our data segment and extra segment. So data segment has been initialized at a location 2000, that means 20,000 physical address, and extra segment has been initialized at 5,000, that means 50,000 is the physical address of the data of the extra segment, right? And after that, uh, you have kept in SI 0002H, right? And in bracket SI you have moved 05H. So where will this data go? Since you have initialized both data segment and extra segment, so where will this data go? So this data will go to DS. This data will go to DS by default if you just specify it like this, right? And similar case is applicable to this DI also. So if you move 06 to DI, now both data segment and extra segment are ready, but by default this data will go to data segment only, right? If you want to write the full syntax, if you want to write the full syntax, that is also possible. I mean, this is a short form of moving the data to data segment. If you want to write it in full form, this is the way you write it. Move SI 0004H, move DS, then colon SI comma 07H. So this will transfer the data to your data segment. This will transfer your data to the data segment, right? And this is the full form of using this SI register with data segment. By default, SI or DI, you can see that the next command does the same thing with DI. So by default, SI and DI will be used with data segment only. But if you want to explicitly state which segment you are using, then you have to use this full syntax. It is advisable to write this full syntax because later on if somebody else reads your program, then SI and DI will be automatically understood, right? Then if you want to use extra segment that way, because SI and DI do not have default as extra segments, so extra segment has to be always explicitly stated if you want to move some data into that. So 09H 0AH will be moved on to SI and DI offset, but now this time in the extra segment, right? So even if somebody writes only this statement by initializing two segments, you will be able to say that since nothing is written, data segment will be used by default. But if extra segment is to be used, then you have to write this particular syntax, right? So for usage of extra segment, this ES keyword has to be always used here, right? So there is no purpose of checking it by emulating it. It's very simple to understand. Then after, let's come to the very last program for today, which is the lookup table. Lookup table I have already explained to you. So this lookup table, it actually is a table which has a key value pair, which has a key value pair. For example, you have your roll number and you have your name. So whether somebody gives me your name or whether somebody gives me your roll number, both are the same things because you can be uniquely identified until unless there are two same names in your classroom. So, but roll numbers will always be unique. Roll numbers will always be unique. So, roll number is the key and name will be the value. Name could be same also and could be different also, right? So, roll number is the key and your name will be your value. So, lookup tables, they will have a key value pair in themselves, right? And they will be very handy when we will make further programs for interfacing. So just to create a lookup table, this is the syntax, right? First of all, your data segment has been initialized, and in BX register, you have moved some value 0003H, and in AL register, you have moved a value of 5H. So here, create a lookup table in externally interfaced memory from this location. So if you want, this is the data segment which has been initialized. Inside the data segment, you want to create a lookup table, and the starting of that lookup table should be kept in BX register, right? This is the syntax. You cannot use any other register apart from this BX register here. So you cannot use any other register, only BX register has to be used here. And suppose you have moved a value of 5 in AL register. Why you have done that? This is the location we want to access from the lookup table. So you have created your lookup table from 0003 offset in data segment, but you do not want to access element number first. Element number 1 you do not want to access. You want to access the element number 5. So that's what you are going to do. You have to put that index in AL register, right? And this, after that, after initializing these two registers, BX and AL, you have to call the xlat command. Now, what is this xlat command? Xlat command will see the contents of BX and AL, and it will assume that from whatever is the offset address which is being put in this BX register, from that the lookup table is there, and it will see the contents of AL register. It will see the contents of AL register, and it will come to know that that location has to be accessed. So this uses the contents of BX and AL to calculate the effective address EA in data segment. And after executing this xlet command, the result will be placed in AL. I mean, whatever is the value at the 05 location, it will be placed in AL register again. So that is how your lookup table will run. That is how your lookup table will run, right? So these are some simple programs which we have already studied, and just for the sake of revision and completeness, I have illustrated them. And let me again show you some program which I had made once upon a time to create a calculator program which used all the concepts. So there you can see that some macros are there. So these are two macros that we have used there, and there are these strings which are defined, and then you have some main procedure, and it functions as a calculator, right? So let me just show you the output of this code, and then we will discuss this code to some extent, right? So if I run this programming once, so you can see that this program, it is a program for calculator, and it says that you will be only able to perform the operations of addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division only. Also, you can use single digit natural numbers only. So this calculator is very limited in its capability, right? You can make calculations, but the numbers from which you can make calculations are very limited. From 0 to 9, you can use only those numbers, right? And the code that I have implemented up till now is only for addition and subtraction. For multiplication and division, I have not implemented anything. So it will only work for addition and subtraction as of now. So let's select this subtraction. So by entering 2, I have selected subtraction. Then now it is asking for number 1, right? So let me take the number 1 as say 7, and it is asking for number 2. Let me take it as 2. So after 7 and 2, when they are subtracted, you get 0.5 as the result. This is a simple program that I have implemented. By now it can contain only addition and subtraction. So let us have a look at that program first. So here again I have defined this print macro in the exact same way as I had defined earlier. Then there is an input macro. Input macro will be used to take inputs from the user, right? And here, to be able to take the input, at the end you again have to type the new line and carriage return character. But to be able to take the input, you have to call interrupt 21h. You have to call the interrupt 21h by moving a value of 01 into AH register. By moving a value of 01h into the AH register, and that way the input will be taken. That way the input will be taken, and input will come automatically into the AL register. If AH register is initialized with 01h and interrupt 21h is called, then the input will be automatically taken into the AL register. And from AL register, I will be subtracting 30. Why I am subtracting 30? Because if you want to take a number as an input, if you want to take the number as an input, then the ASCII representation of that number will be taken as an input. And ASCII representation of 0 is 30, ASCII representation of 1 is 31, ASCII representation of 2 is 32, so on and so forth. So that is why if you want to convert it into the format in which we require, we have to subtract 30 from that, right? So that number will be taken as an input, and then after you have print the carriage return and new line character. So this is the macro for taking an input from the user. Then the result macro is also defined. So in result macro, all you have to do is you just have to print the str12 command. Str12, right? What is str12? Let's have a look at that. So the result is, and then whatever is your result. So for doing that, I have written this code. So in AL, you have to move this P3. What is this P3? You can identify it from the program. I think somewhere I must have defined this P3. Okay. So let's do one thing. In today's laboratory session, you will further extend this code. You will first of all understand this code. And then you will extend this code. So that it will be capable of doing multiplication and subtraction as well. And the range of numbers that you are going to use should be extended from 1 byte to 2 bytes, right? You can make it for either 1 byte or 2 bytes, but you should be able to use numbers greater than 9 also, because the program that I have implemented by now, it works only for inputs from 0 to 9, right? But I now need a program which should be able to work for at least 1 byte. It should be able to do, and it should be able to do addition, subtraction, multiplication, as well as division, right? So is that point understood by everyone? In today's laboratory session, as I already told you, there is some urgent meeting which has been scheduled from 3 o'clock. So I won't be available immediately from 3 o'clock, but the lab will happen. I will subsequently join the lab. So till the time I won't be available, all you have to do is the code for this addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division for 1 byte by using macros and various other things has to be there, and a proper user interface has to be designed on the DOS screen. So is the problem for today understood? Problem for laboratory? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so in today's laboratory,
Yes, sir.
we do that, right? So in the previous 2 lectures, I mean including this one, in the current lecture and one previous lecture, we have just revised the programs that we had for 8086. We had a bird's eye view. From the next class, we will start with probably one interfacing device and programs related to that in the next week, right? So we will try to interface either a keyboard or a display unit or some other interfacing device, and we will try to make programs for that. So that's what we are going to start from the very next lecture, and it will be a very interesting topic. So you will be able to assemble your computers by yourself. Memory we have already learned how to interface, but just memory will not do. So we will try to interface some keyboard and some maybe screens, etc. And we will be interchangeably using 8085 and 8086, because for the kind of softwares that are available with us, I think 8086 has got some pre-interface device already. So coding will be easy there, and some devices are interfaced with other one, right? So we will be using them interchangeably, and that would hardly affect the understanding of interfacing, because anyway, whatever processor is provided to you, interfacing can be done to anyone. You should know the procedure only, and that's what is important, right? So in the today's laboratory, I'll be probably available after 1 hour. That means 3 to 4 the meeting will be there. From 4 o'clock I will be available, and the meeting is already scheduled. So you will all be solving that problem that I have given to you today. And after solving the problem, be available in the laboratory from 4 o'clock, so that attendance will be taken at 5 o'clock after completing the laboratory session. Right? So any doubts so far? Although we have discussed the older codes only. So even if any doubts are there, you can ask. Okay, so if there are no doubts, I'll be taking the attendance and closing the session.